call that radio. You call that radio TV. No. You call that radio TV.
This is You Call That Radio.
This is You Call That Radio TV. We're about to go live to Newcastle, where we're going to speak to Mike Cow of Milk the Cow podcast. Mike, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am, mate, but I'm not in the tune at the minute. I'm not in Newcastle.
No, where are you?
I'm in Shetland.
Shetland?
I am further north than you, man.
Fuck's sake, man, I didn't know that. I knew you'd moved, but I thought you'd kind of went Yorkshire kind of way.
Well, it's just for a bit, like, it's, my partner's got some work up here, so I can just work anywhere, like, so we're just checking it out. Tell you what, the winter's brutal at the minute. Last couple of weeks have been a mare.
No, mate. No, well, that's maybe the wrong time of the year. But it's the first time, lockdown was the first time I've ever considered leaving Glasgow, just because, you know, normally there's just so much stuff happening in Glasgow that, you know, you just get away for it. I like a wee break away for the country, or like going to festivals and stuff. But because all that was gone and you've got a city with no gigs or restaurants, but you still had traffic, Shetland sounds amazing. But obviously,
it is, mate. We've got a house, right, and it just looks out over one of the bays, and orcas, not killer whales. I was just doing the dishes one day, looked up, there was fucking a pod of orcas out in the bay, man. It was amazing. It's a beautiful place. Like, I mean, it's kind of like Christmas Day we're here, and the weather was like, for once, tremendous, you know. And it was just like, you know, when you're like in a dream and you just see like this beautiful like landscape in a dream. It's just like that when it's sunny, man. It's unbelievable.
Oh, and well, you're nearly there, man. It's nearly spring. So you got to get a wee bit of springtime out there.
Well, hope so. We'll be here for another month or so, and we're going back to the tune and then on to the next place. We're not really sure where that is yet, but we're kind of just trying to get a bit of life in the middle of the pandemic, you know. And with everything being shut, this is how we've been doing it. Just being open to sort of whatever comes up and trying to get some life, aye.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't actually complain too much. I mean, we obviously December and January get cancelled, so we had gigs cancelled all over the place up here again. But you know, round about just the tail end of festival season, we got to go to Lindisfarne Festival, play there. That was great, and there's been a few gigs. So I feel like I feel very grateful for every gig that I did, every bit of life I've seen towards the end, because obviously there was absolutely nothing for ages. So it was good to see stuff coming back. Shetland, says Joanne G. The Bonnie Isles, says Epi. And Stuart Graham's in the house. Hello, Stuart. Mike Cow, it's been a long time coming to finally get you on the show. I was inspired by your podcast, your sort of audio podcast way back in the day. So it's great to see you're doing the Cow Daily, which is more like a kind of live stream format, similar to what we do here as well.
That's right, mate. Aye.
What would you say the main differences are between, you know, doing like an audio podcast compared to doing a sort of live video thing?
Well, I've always been reticent to do the video stuff, like mainly because I'm ugly as fuck. No, I'm joking. The audio thing when we were doing it back then was the thing, but now you kind of have to be like to get any kind of reach, like be on the YouTube and other platforms and that. And the whole slant with Cow Daily really is good faith independent media. What happened with the last general election? I mean, you know yourself, we do quite a bit of like political stuff, and like I do quite a bit of writing and whatever, and like put that out. The media like really like fucked over any chance millions of people living in poverty have to get any kind of relief from like on a governmental level. I don't see any, especially in England, any of the main parties like relative to the people at the bottom end of society, so to speak, they're going to do anything tangible. So the way I look at it is this, like in terms of activism and in terms of like what can be useful in doing, it's to build like a good faith media platform. So what that means is we've joined the Independent Media Association. To do that within the first 6 to 12 months, you've got to be regulated by something called Impress, which is like the mainstream media are regulated by something called IPSO. We're actually going to be regulated to a higher level than any of the mainstream media. Also, joining the National Union of Journalists, so we want to like sort of like really give it a bit of like just get the credentials in. Do you know what I mean? And just sort of like make it something that obviously the type of stuff we do, it's always drawn opposition. So it's something we can always point to, Mark, you know what I mean? And say, well, look, we're regulated to a much higher standard, you know?
That's interesting, man. So because I've heard of this before, that it is to a higher standard than the mainstream media, which seems absolutely mental. So I suppose that's a good point about, because obviously I think everybody's now on the agreement that the mainstream media cannot be trusted. But it's been quite saddening to see, especially over the last year or two, that people seem to just sort of, that are against mainstream, sort of believe whatever an alternative mainstream source tells them. But also they will share a mainstream article if it backs up what they already think is happening. So how do we make sure, how do we know what the truth is? How do we find the truth in the middle of all this misinformation and disinformation?
Well, I mean, it's about, I think, like, one of the things that we've enjoyed over the years is people like see us as operating in good faith. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. Like, we did like a live stream last night. We've done like 4s, like kind of dress rehearsal, so to speak. You know what I mean? And what that's entailed is I detest Keir Starmer. Like, he broke all 10 of his pledges when he stood to be leader of the Labour Party. But that's by the by. All this like Savile stuff. Basically, like, you might have heard of a guy called Linton Crosby, and he's like one of these dark arts media people, kind of in the vein of Dominic Cummings. He's brought him in to save his job, and you've heard, Mark, you heard of something called the dead cat theory? You're now people.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware of the dead cat theory, but explain it for people who don't.
Well, what it is, it's about, like, obviously, like, Johnson was getting clamped in Parliament, wasn't he? So he's thrown a dead cat on the table, which is this whole Jimmy Savile thing from when Keir Starmer was Director of Public Prosecutions. If you actually sort of fact check what he's actually doing, Starmer was the head, but he wasn't the guy who was actually like dealing with that particular case at the time. So he, like, you know, there's a little bit of to and fro, and that's went on with that. Within Parliament, there's parliamentary privilege, and for people who don't know what that means, is you can pretty much say anything you want about anybody, and you can't be like sued for libel. So there was yesterday morning there was a journalist, Nick Robinson. He interviewed Dominic Raab, who's Johnson's deputy. And he was like sort of grilling him and saying, will you repeat it? Will you repeat it? And Dominic Raab wouldn't repeat it because he knows he can be done for libel. And they know they can't like actually back that up, and it doesn't meet the threshold in a court of law. But everybody's talking about it. We're talking about it now, you know, and that's what Linton Crosby's been brought in to do. And
it's
interesting
that that's the first time that I can think of that. You know, I mean, let's get it clear that Starmer is probably one of the most ineffective opposition leaders I've ever seen, especially how bad the Tories have been doing. But I noticed that there was a speech that he gave yesterday, I think it was, or the day, the one with the Savile thing. It was when he gave that speech, the Tories all were very quiet, as if they were almost in agreement with it, rather than shouting out as usual. It seemed like the media had kind of said Starmer got him a good one. And then, so has Boris just been keeping that dead cat for when he felt like, right, he's actually starting to get, this is starting to hit?
It's probably the dark arts, man. And it's like, this is going to get worse and worse. I mean, Linton Crosby, some of his background is, you might recall when Sadiq Khan first stood for London Mayor against Zach Goldsmith, which is just some kind of landed gentry dickhead, you know. I mean, Sadiq Khan did ultimately end up winning that election. But Linton Crosby was the advisor to Zach Goldsmith, and he was the one who brought in this whole like Islamophobia style of things. And it's like a dog whistle to the far right. So Sadiq Khan has been plagued by that in comment sections and everywhere else by bots and otherwise ever since then. And obviously that's affected his ability to lead. So if they don't win the election, then they'll hamstring any... I mean, I've got no time for Sadiq Khan. I don't see him as any kind of progressive force that's going to help us, the people. But at the same time, like the Tories will hamstring the opposition whether they win an election or not. And I think that's bringing it back to sort of the cow daily approach and what we're trying to do. I was ill for a lot of the last year. You know, I was quite badly ill, and it gives a lot of time to reflect on what we're actually doing. And I think this, as I say, this is how we're best served, by trying to build some kind of platform and building on like the existing name of what we've done historically, and try and reach people with sort of good faith journalism, really. So what we're looking to do is obviously pick that up with the funding side of things. We'll start a Patreon specifically for Cow Daily. We're looking to bring people in on union wages, everybody members of the NUJ, and actually do this properly. Because I think the evolution of independent media is like video as well as the writing side of things that we do. So we'll be putting out like both sides of things. And like as I say, I did actually put something out, like a little bit of writing on one of my Facebook pages, like demonstrating that Keir Starmer on this particular thing shouldn't be attacked on. But we did like a piece on last night's live stream where I demonstrated all of these things when he was Director of Public Prosecutions that you can attack him on. Because we're at the point now where like the Labour Party is not a left-wing party. I wouldn't exactly consider myself to be any kind of ideology at all. All I want is for everybody to have what they need and a little bit more. I don't give a shit about socialism and all of this other stuff. I think you get bogged down in a lot of like 200-year-old books written by dead people, you know. And I think we've got to like meet people where they're at actually now, but also be bloody entertaining while you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like it's a fucking snooze fest, a lot of this like left-wing coverage, and I think that's probably where people would place us. You know, even though I kind of resist that a little bit. It's like I say, we just want to like operate in good faith, Mark. You know what I mean? And I think like that's really sadly lacking in the British media landscape. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's what always. We did a show the other week. It was a Bam Up Boris special, and straight away people were saying, "Aye, but what about SNP and what about Labour?" And it's that what about that always comes out. And I can honestly say there is no political party that I'm interested in at all.
What do you think of the SNP, Mark? Like, because obviously I do follow Scottish politics. I've lived in Glasgow twice, and I've got a lot of love for the city and Scotland as a whole, you know. But I've been away too long. I mean, I'm in Shetland, but they consider themselves Norwegian more than Scottish. You know what I mean? So. What are you? Where are you at with that?
I think SNP's went down in popularity for a lot of reasons over the pandemic, but I think because the Tories and Labour have been so terrible that I don't think it's got really affected the polling or anything like that just now. But I don't really think much of the SNP or any of the political parties. I mean, I think that at the root of it, I think that's the problem with all politics is that it's a party. I think everyone should be standing as an independent, which means you can actually vote for things as you believe without a whip telling you how to vote and stuff like that. I mean, the best example I can give is, you know, if someone's had an affair or something like that, then the opposition will use that as a stick to beat people with. But if it's your own side that's had an affair, we go, let's wait until all the facts are established. They've got a family, you know, it's like, it's a lot of hypocrisy. When you're with a party, you can't just say it the way you see it. Say it the way you see it, aye. You can't do that. So I've not really got any time for any of the political parties, sadly, at the minute.
No, I hear what you're saying, neither do I.
But I think it's safe to say that the Tories are the worst that I've ever seen in my lifetime. Because I mean, I suppose the thing about conservative, this doesn't seem like conservative because, you know, I'm not a conservative person, so it's never been something that I would agree with politically. But the whole point of, you know, traditions, personal responsibility, I can see why that's attractive to people of a certain age or of a certain bank balance, etc. But this Boris Johnson stuff is not conservative at all. And I think that's why they are actually struggling a bit. And that's why Starmer, despite how shite he is actually, I think he's maybe even leading in some polls as well.
Some of them he was, aye. But there was this week I think they compared Corbyn 22 months on with him. And he's at like around about the same or slightly worse in terms of his popularity rating than Corbyn was 22 months after he assumed the leadership, you know. So he's a bit of a myth. And like one of the problems that I've got, and we talked about it a bit on last night's show, was the fact like the media are giving him the easiest ride ever. And there was this whole thing of like when Corbyn was leader, it was like, oh, this is the worst Conservative government. They should be 20 points ahead. Anybody else would be 20 points ahead. Well, that's been provably not the case with Starmer. And I mean, it comes down to daft little things as well. I mean, you know yourself, they're trying to like win over working class people or just people like from maybe our background or whatever. And they're putting out videos of him like trying to hit punch bags and that sounds daft, but he can't punch. Whoever's advising him to do that, you know, they talk about this red wall and they can't win an election without winning back the red wall. A lot of people, like where I'm from, which is the red wall, they'll just take one look at that and go, who's that dafty, you know? And it's them things in terms of it, like image management and whatever. Well, to be honest, I'll be honest with you, I'm pleased they're getting it wrong because I've got no time for the Labour Party whatsoever anymore. I think the things that happened internally, like I've seen the leaked report, and I mean, obviously it's still going on a legal thing, so I don't want to talk about like what that is to put myself in a position. But there was people working allegedly inside the party against like trying to get elected, and that was both 2017 and even more so in 2019. And I mean, people like me and loads of other people like me, like I protested against the Iraq war and Afghanistan, and that was one of the things that politicized us. Cannot stand Tony Blair. Like, never ever thought I'd vote Labour, never mind join as a member, but I did that because I saw like that opportunity as once in a lifetime where we could actually meet the needs of people in a little bit more, you know, with things like universal basic income. I know it was laughed at, but the free broadband and all that. Reason being, I worked as a community worker for 20 odd years before I started doing anything like this. And for me, like, people have got names, faces. You know, I mean, when I was living in Glasgow, I was working in the East End. You know, I did a job with Save the Children in the East End, and it really boils me piss when I like see people like talk about the poor and that kind of thing. These are people. I mean, I grew up in a council estate in Gateshead. You know, it's like it was by no means the roughest place in the world, but it wasn't that good in the 80s. I've told this story a lot of times. There was like before we got double glazed and used to scrape ice off the inside of the bloody window, and it's like I'm from that, you know, and I won't just go, oh well, fuck it, just because I've moved on in life. I want people to be dragged up too as well, you know what I mean? I want them to be given an opportunity, and I'm not seeing it from anybody. The Labour and the Conservatives offer no solutions. I mean, how do you feel about Scottish independence, Mark? Where do you stand with that?
100%. I'm up for that.
Me too, and I was pretty gutted when I was like it didn't actually happen for you, you know. It was
It's I mean, it's not for any kind of patriotism, flag waving reasons. It's just Westminster just seems so broken that the only way is to get away from it. You know, the metaphor of you can only be, you know, handcuffed to a psychopath for so long before you have to cut your arm off, or something like that. That David Blair likes to say a lot. And I think, you know, let Ireland do their thing, let Scotland do its thing, and obviously Wales is wanting to do its thing now as well, and maybe people realise Great Britain isn't as great as it's made out, and maybe we'll start voting differently as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally for independence, and you know, people say, oh, what if it's bad? But who gives a shit? We're just so out. We're just. I mean, I consider Newcastle to be like Scotland as well. Like when I visited Newcastle, it just is. It's very similar to Glasgow. It's very north. It's forgotten about just as much as Scotland as well. Nobody's, you know, paying attention to what you guys need also. And I think that, I mean, it's quite. I do remember when the independence referendum was on the first time. I remember you were one of the few people that, excuse the phrase, on the left, but that was against there was quite a lot of people were against independence in England when we played Manchester. Lots of my friends down there were like, why are you doing that? They'd fallen into the BBC narrative of Alex Salmond's a dictator, and Alex Salmond seems to be a dick, but it was not about that. It wasn't about being led by Alex Salmond. It was just about getting away from Westminster. But what I noticed was quite interesting, sadly, is a lot of people who kind of fell for the independence rhetoric, when they seen how the media destroyed Corbyn, then they started asking questions of the BBC and the mainstream at large. I mean, the way that he was dealt with, the way that all the Tories got away with murder, there was scandals everywhere that just get ignored, and they would just focus on really ridiculous shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. At times it felt like he was having to defend himself for liking to do his garden. You know, he had an allotment. You know, he's wearing slippers, and this was like some kind of mad scandal. Did you notice that from where you were as well, that after the way that Corbyn was treated, that people did start to sort of question the mainstream a bit more?
I think like the Milton Cow following. I don't like using following. Like it's like I know a lot of the people.
Well, it's a community. It's a community.
Yeah,
for anyone who doesn't know, Milk the Cow's like got 70,000, 80,000 on Facebook, and then they've got YouTube. Twitter, Insta on top of that as well. So it's a massive community. Everyone should check it out, by the way. Like Milk the Cow podcast on Facebook. And I've put a wee link to the YouTube channel there. Give it
and vice versa, if you hear from the Milk the Cow stuff, when I've just shared the thing, like
hit
these
those
guys
big
as
red
well, we've
buttons
always had
and
good
those
links, haven't we? So, like, please
notification
do.
bells, big red buttons, all that stuff. And yeah, so it's every Tuesday that you're doing your show now, is that right?
Every Tuesday at 7, mate. And I mean, we're developing it. Like I say, we just started with the like 4 dress rehearsal shows in January. Do you know what I mean? We haven't really done a promo campaign with it, but we've got like a lot of like higher profile guests lined up. We're going to do 2 things. We're going to do like the traditional podcast format and then the live streams, because one thing we have lacked over the years is like staying current. And that's what I like about this live stream thing. We can like react to what's happening that day. And then, you know, now you know yourself, if you've got to have the most content you can to like beat the algorithm. So we can obviously chop that up. I'm going to start making like short videos as well, like just what's happening that day, like just sitting here, just like reacting to it and throwing a few things up on the screen as well. Because I think it's a really good way of reaching people. And I do see that.
Just to add as well to what you were saying earlier on about the video thing, I didn't want to switch to video, but I did. I kind of, you call it radio, was just an audio podcast, which is still an audio podcast, by the way, for people who don't know, Spotify, Apple and all that. We usually put the best ones onto that. But I was quite aware quite early on, that just before lockdown happened, that as an event organiser and as a performer, I was fucked. So I was like, well, most people listen to our podcast on their way to work, commuting or going on holiday. So it was like, right, everyone's going to be in the house. So day one, Hamish gave me a microphone and I got a webcam and I just went for it, man. And yeah, luckily, thanks to the people who chipped in for the Patreon, I managed to survive the worst of it. Hopefully, the worst of it is over now.
It's tremendous. I mean, it's just one thing I want to pick up about what you mentioned about Scottish independence before, and the media. I remember, like, what was it, like Gordon Brown on the papers with all the pledges if you stay in and all of this, and it's been a load of shite. You can't like trust like those Labour big beasts as they call them, and the BBC were the same, and they're supposed to be impartial. I mean, we did a bit on like Nick Robinson, the political editor last night, going right in on Dominic Raab, and then like we showed a tweet where he was like sort of held accountable for his treatment of Corbyn as well from back then. And they're all like on the payroll, man. I mean, he used to be like the president of the Conservative Association at one of the Oxford universities. They're all thick as thieves. You look at what's happening with like the police and whatever, like the Met Police. Like Sajid Javid, the health secretary's brother's like a deputy commissioner of the Met Police. And Cressida Dick's partner, she's like all linked into it as well. They're all like thick as thieves, and she used to be mates with Boris Johnson at Oxford or whatever it was. And it's like, where do we get in as normal people? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we get into this decision making? It's just cut off for a man. And I think that's what one of the reasons why that went going against Scottish independence, Corbyn, anything that challenges the status quo. You have like really powerful forces within the media and within politics because they're all old school Thai people, and they will just move against like whatever looks like it's going to make any meaningful changes for people like you and me. And
it looks like some of the media were at these parties, the Partygate parties, because it's probably going to commit those people in the police, the media, because they're all either related or married into each other, and it's absolutely scandalous. We've actually got an article. We've got a few guest articles coming out on youcallthat.com, our website. We've got the amazing Bram Gibbon, aka Texture. He was on the show last week talking about the memeing of Boris Johnson. She's got an article coming out that was really interesting, and it's about how Boris is so memeable, and the same with Trump and how they use that to their advantage, and how Corbyn to a lesser extent was memeable, but it seems Keir Starmer's just not memeable because he's just not interesting enough. And I suppose the advantage that a lot of the right-wing media, the alternative media, which now just seems to be alternative media that's successful, seems to be quite right-wing, and it's maybe because they just like to say whatever sounds the most clickbait and get the views in. Is there anybody sort of on the left, or maybe not on the left, just not like wild, ridiculous clickbait right-wing media that you?
Well, there's a few bits and bobs, but there's nothing that's like exactly perfect. I mean, I do watch Novara Media. They do live streams like during the week as well, and they've got like maybe 100,000 like subscribers on YouTube and whatever, and they seem to be growing and growing. And I think there's a place for them, but like they don't go far enough for me. And I don't think for like working class people living in a state, they use a lot of like language they really don't need to use. It's like they've got their audience, and it's people who maybe understand it. And I think one of the things that people have said about what we do is like we make seemingly complex things simple, because quite often they are. And it's like how we can make it real for people's lives. And I'd like, to be honest, after I was ill, I really thought about just sacking this off and going back to community work, you know. But I've got a good bunch of people around us and some really good friends, and they're like, "Nah, man, just like give it another blast with this. Like, there's really a place for like what we do, sort of thing." And that's what this is really with Cow Daily. It's like, right, recognizing the problems and working on solutions. And through the Independent Media Association as well, I mean, I've found some real support like nationally, you know, and I think that's one of the things that has really made us want to push on. I know there's people like us out there. I work with them every bloody day, you know. I mean, I know that they're working within the House of Lords and within the House of Commons, and they're trying to get some the lawmakers within that to get leverage with the Googles and the Facebooks. Because I'll tell you a story actually. Like the 2017 election, right? On our sort of reach and whatever, in the week leading into 2017 election, our reach was something like 20 to 30 million. I can't remember the exact number, but it was high, you know, which was twice as much as the Sun newspaper, if you can call it that. So, but fast forward to the 2019 election, I'd put a story out where I'd written a little bit about, I think it was like Russian bots or something like that. I think it was about 6 weeks out from the election. What happened was I got like a warning from Facebook, say like some fact check thing. And I was like, well, no, I can prove this. So I put that in, and then nothing was really said, and there was no ban. It was continued as normal. So fast forward again, 2 weeks before the polls closed, I got a 2-week ban, and it ended 2 minutes after 10 on the day the polls closed. Now that's incredibly dodgy. Like, I mean, even people who are so anti-conspiracy theory must look at that and think, well, why didn't they give you the ban when they first told you 6 weeks out? It was the same thing. There was like no difference, and it was just applied to like for 14 days, 2 weeks out. So our reach, obviously, from compared to 2017, went to zero. I couldn't post on any of like on Facebook, which is like my main platform, you know. So one of the things that we're doing now is, I know we need to spread ourselves a bit wider, but obviously that like needs more people. It can't just be like 1 or 2 or 3 people in it, you know. We've got to like build it up, and that's what the Patreon's about, you know. We've got to like, I don't want to just like rely, you know. We'll all volunteer with time and all that. And I like in the community work, I would run volunteer training. One of the problems with that is, it's like, well, it's a problem for the organization, but not a problem for the person. A lot of people volunteer, and then they go on and they get jobs, which is brilliant, but you lose those skills and experiences. And like, you cannot really afford to do that with like a tight team doing something like this. So, well, at the minute, we're doing it pretty much voluntary, and a bit of money's coming in because we just started it. You know what I mean? It's like been the last sort of month we've really been pushing it out. And that's what it's really for as well. We want to get people to get paid like proper union wages as well, with the benefits and everything of that nature. And I didn't want this to turn into some mad infomercial, but like, I'm really passionate about like putting my time and effort into building independent media alongside people like yourselves. And I know like up your way, the Ferret there, remember the Independent Media Association as well. There's a lot of others, like Another Angry Voice and people that people might have heard of, and we're kind of coalescing around this organization. It's a young organization, but there's a lot of people who recognize this as a problem, and we don't have to always approach it from like, I know it's a bit dry, like what I'm explaining tonight, but we do have a laugh. And as you know yourself, we've always approached it from a cultural angle as well. It's not just about like, oh, here's the politics of the day. It's a bit of politics, a bit of culture, and I think we're just finding our format at the minute. You know what I mean, Mark? I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Are you on mute?
Sorry, I was mute.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been doing this nearly 2 years, and this and I've still not found a format either. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, but it's just experimenting with different things. Sometimes we just talk about music, sometimes we just talk shite, and sometimes we do get political. And it's just, I think it's a sort of a balance, because I mean, I think that you can get too much into politics. So that's, I mean, the way that I used to form my opinions was by watching all the news from all the different angles. Sure. And then you can usually, if you can be arsed doing that, if you watch a bit of Fox and you watch a bit of CNN and you watch, a bit of Russia Today, and if you watch them all, you can usually form an opinion based on, with not so much what they say, but what they don't say. You can kind of figure out what's going on, but it's also, it can be quite depressing to just consume that much news. So I think I do recommend everybody has a wee break for that from time to time as well. So that's why it's good just to do a bit of a show about culture, or just do it. I mean, I know that you've got a background that is like an event organising stuff like that, and music events. Is it? Have you got any more plans to put on actual real life events at the moment, or are you just waiting till?
Well, I've got good links with Boomtown, so like we're talking with them again. Before the pandemic, we went down and did 4 shows over the weekend down there, like mostly around centered around the Speaker's Corner. I interviewed Spiral Tribe, who did the free parties, the Castle Morton, there's the most legendary one. I did an on stage with them, and they'd never done an interview before, I think. So
that's a scoop.
It was good stuff, man. We haven't actually released it yet because, obviously, the way things had went. So we've got a lot of audio stuff, and so, actually that one's got some video as well. Somebody else recorded.
We're hoping to be at Boomtown this year, actually, because in my band, Gyro Babies, because we had been booked for 2020, then obviously the world stopped, so we didn't get to go there. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be at Boomtown and hopefully see you there, man.
Definitely, man. I mean,
also, I noticed in your info you've got interviews with. Is that the interviews that you've got coming up? So is that Darren
I had already pre-recorded. We've got what lad up your way. Got a lot of time for Darren McGarvey, Loki, the Scottish rapper, really great lad. Love him. Sleaford Mods, we've done one with Jake Hanrahan. People probably know him from Vice, where he was embedded with the, I think it was the YPG, and where they were fighting against ISIS. He also got locked up in Turkey, and he got another thing he was telling me about. He got death threats off these mad satanic Nazis, which is some brutal but amazing story. Loads more issue-based stuff like Channel Rescue. They're telling me about the work that they're doing on a voluntary basis, looking out for refugees in the channel, making sure that the government don't do too much naughty shit, but without being monitored. Long COVID kids. I mean, we're that's what I mean. It's about we're doing the cultural side, but we want to go to bat for people who aren't getting their voices heard. You know, you're not getting that long format stuff, which I think is really important about podcasts, where people get a chance to speak what they're actually doing without the format you get on Newsnight, where it's all just gotcha media. You know, we're waiting to trip each other up, and it's fucking bullshit, man.
Noam Chomsky's barred himself from doing Newsnight or anything like that anymore, because you're on for 2 minutes and they'll ask a very complicated question that requires context. You know, if you're talking about the Middle East and stuff, you can't just answer something in a soundbite. And I think, I'm loving it. I mean, obviously, like you said, Navarra, I think I'll agree with you on that. It can be a bit dull at times, but it's good to see that exists. Same with Double Down News and stuff like that. I've been enjoying some of their stuff as well. But yeah, the more the merrier, and speaking a language that people can understand is very important. I've got some comments coming in. James Stewart saying he's gone on a rant here. So we've got BBC corporate controlled by Tory board. Channel 4's the same now. Guardian's been sold to corporate. Novara, shit lib middle class tossers. Don't sit in the fence, James. SNP are yellow warmonger Tories in Westminster. Council community workers are getting cut in austerity budget. And don't watch Microsoft, NBC, Bill Gates is worse than Fox. And he's going to link up at Lindisfarne. Great lineup this year. I don't know about Lindisfarne this year, but we played it last year, so I try not to bother a festival if they've booked us one year. So I don't think we're playing it this year. I think, because I know what it's like as a festival booker. When you book somebody, people feel as if you're ditching them because you've not booked them 2 years in a row, but you need to keep the lineup fresh. But I'll be there, and it's a great lineup. Lots of my friends are going, so I'll probably just be there as a punter or whatever.
I mean, in terms of...
Did you not do something with Lindisfarne as well, way back in the day?
Well, I think it was like I did. It was like the first one or something like that. But it's, like I say, I got quite ill, so I just pulled back from everything. And then the stuff that I started doing again was just people getting in touch, asking us if like booking us to like play as a performer, really, rather than the organizational side. So I did like a few things, like this thing called Podcast Social Club as well, which was the first like weekend long podcast festival in the UK. So there was like a variety of different podcasters on. It was a good weekend, actually. I've just been kind of easing myself back into stuff, but I'm sound now, so we're just open to all things. So if anybody's listening and you want me to come and do something with you, get in touch. Also on the event side of things, I'm craving doing events, but I'm just trying to work out like what we're doing with the media stuff first, and it's always work that the media stuff that we do kind of it sells tickets. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to build that platform, and then things will follow from there, won't it?
Absolutely. And we got shouts to Christopher Smith, shouting out Bradford. Bradford's in the house. Eppie's next to Parkhead, saying Parkhead is kicking off rowdy like.
Eat up.
Has he
got any video?
Going, mental, as many sources, as many sources you can collect. Routers is my go-to in the main.
Defo, man. Yeah, it's
that's where the sources get the
stuff. Sorry, go ahead, mate.
Where do routers get their news from? They just
the thing is, the way it works is like there's news wires, so like AP and stuff like that, and I think Reuters as well. But like you get like the journalists and the things will come in on the wire, and like the criticism of that is it like tends to lead to a lot of like repetition. So you can often see if a story's like broken, like mainstream media want to get it out first. It's quite often not about like accuracy, because they're like, obviously, especially now with the model of advertising where it's on like who can click on things first. It's a strong headline followed by like maybe it's a paragraph. You see it quite a lot. They'll do a paragraph, more to follow. And people will click on that. And they're still getting the same ad revenue off that rather than doing like good journalism. Now, I'm not saying there's not good journalists within the mainstream. There is. But like they're not getting the time to get out there and do the actual work and come up with the things that we actually need, like it used to be. Because like with the best will in the world, everything's so fast paced now, isn't it? With the internet and whatever. Like it's yesterday. Like it used to be like back in the day, like yesterday's fish and chip paper, didn't it? Whereas now you probably get an hour, 2, 3 if you're lucky, and then off it moves. So hence why we've jumped in the live stream stuff, because I think. Doing like one podcast a week pre-record and then editing it and all of that, like we'll still do that, and that'll be like more evergreen stuff, issue based, you know what I mean, stuff that I've mentioned, channel rescue, etc. But the live stream stuff would like to go to 2-3 times a week when the Patreon goes up, you know, and when we're going to afford to employ more people to actually do the research and the editing, because at the minute I'm doing most of it myself, and I'm learning how to like edit video and whatever. And it's, you know, it's a lot for your brain, isn't it? And then you've got to like sort of got to turn the live stream on and perform, and you know yourself, you're doing it.
It's been a lot, but what seems to be good though is I feel like this is the first time in a few months where I've not had to learn a new software, because I was having to learn how to, you know, do Premiere Pro, Photoshop, all these things. So I've kind of got competent at a whole bunch of things, like just learning all these all these things, how everything works. It's been a pain in the arse, and I suppose that's been a good advantage of doing it live with these shows, is that you don't have to spend time in editing. So like when I do an edited show, it's a lot more polished, it looks better, and I can edit in a way that it reflects my views on things a bit better. But you end up trying to become too much of a perfectionist and thinking too much and try to get things just right. Well, if it's live, it's out there. And I mean, that's how you get more stuff done.
I like the immediacy of the live stuff, and I'm enjoying learning it. Like, because you know yourself, the first part of new skills acquisition, when you're burning them neural pathways, it hurts. It literally hurts your brain. It feels like it's pouring out of my ears at times. But I've got past that first bit, you know, and I'm a little bit like, you know, I've always at school as well found it hard to just sit in one place. I like to be out and about and doing the stuff. So it's been like a real sort of source of like growing discipline, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I have to do this, because if I don't, it's not going to happen. And it's like, you know, it's a good incentive to get it out. So, what to your point just before, like, what I found with that is, it's I've learned that like you can do good things like that, but I've also learned not to be so much of a bloody perfectionist. It like I'll show things to other people and like it looks mint, and I'll be like, I could have done so much more with that. It's like, well, like if you're just doing it on your own, like what other time are you burning into when you like content or making sure that you're not knackered when you turn the microphones on, because ultimately it's about what comes out the speakers and what people say, isn't it? They don't say all that work, they just want to be entertained, really. So you've got to get the balance right there.
I made a video called Jacket Mask. It took me 10 minutes. People loved it. Got me better feedback than all the stuff that I slave over. So I think you have got to just get that perfectionist out your head and realise that people just like stuff, and it's you don't really know. It's the same with writing a song or something. You don't really know if it's good until other people hear it and decide if it's good or not. So yeah, just keep doing more stuff, and the more stuff you do, the more you learn from it. In fact, this is what a trick you could do as well. So when you're doing a live stream, and then you're just talking about all sorts of things, then if you're doing a live thing, you could just say, right, what is everyone talking about, and then hack the algorithm. So what we could do is we could do a wee we've got 4 minutes left before the football starts, and all the Glasgow viewers disappear to watch the football. So
and
what
Glasgow
we should talk about
pure carnage.
we're talking about media, so I'd like to hear your opinion on Joe Rogan and Neil Young. And then we could just snip at that, put that out, and that'll get the views.
Well, it does, because anybody who mentions Joe Rogan now, and this is why CNN and whatever are attacking him, right? Like I saw like a graph of viewing figures, and he was something like per episode about 12 million or something. His platform, just him and young Jamie, his producer, sitting there, gets far more views than CNN, Fox, and all these other ones combined. So we talked about that clickbait model earlier in the show. If you're just watching this clip now, watch the whole show, go back to it. And the clickbait model, like they know that they can appease their shareholders by attacking Joe Rogan. So it seems every couple of weeks there's a new Joe Rogan like scandal or whatever. And the latest one being Spotify, and then Neil Young wanting to leave and all that. Now, a bit of background. I've watched Joe Rogan since he was on Justin TV, like when, this kind of stuff was in its infancy, where it was much more complicated to do. Like I've learned a lot from watching his program. Now, because we all grow and all get into different things, I really enjoyed watching. There was, I can't remember the name of the journalist. It was an Australian guy, and he absolutely handed his arse to him about like there was something about vaccinations and whatever. And I can watch things and not have to agree with everything somebody says. Like I can watch things and think, well, I didn't like you on that, but I like you on this. Whereas now it seems that you've got to pick a side. And I think that's a massive problem. Like people will make mistakes, especially if you're doing this kind of thing as many hours as he has. You're going to be able to pull clips out and you'll be able to pull, I bet you I could pull clips out about, you call that radio.
I bet you could.
And vice versa. Because it lacks the context of because it's long form, isn't it? And Rogan has said like a lot of like fucking crazy shit, what he does do is he'll jump on his Instagram and he'll go, yeah, I fucked up and I got that wrong. And not a lot of people will do that. A lot of people will double down. So that's kind of refreshing. There's quite a lot of things that I don't agree with him on, but I find like his content quite entertaining. So I'm going to continue to watch it.
If he's got a good guest, it's amazing. Like, I quite enjoyed the Duncan Trussell recently. He kind of
I love him. Do you listen to Duncan Trussell Family Hour?
Yeah, man. Duncan
Brilliant,
Trussell's
man.
Great. But it was good to see they were both steaming, and it was good to see Duncan Trussell just kind of sort of pull him up for, having, what do you call him, Ben Shapiro and all that kind of stuff on it. And it was just sort of, it wasn't kind of backing down, but it was good to watch that. And I think in general he's quite good at changing his mind as new knowledge arrives, which is what we should all be doing. But I think he has maybe just got himself into a bit of a pickle with some of the stuff he said before, because it was the Australian doctor, I think I know the one you're talking about.
Aye. Where
he was talking about the chances of heart complications or whatever for young people getting the vaccine, and he's like, yeah, but it's 5 times more if you get COVID. And then when he brought it up, he seemed like reluctant to take that new information that time, which I thought was a wee bit concerning. But at the end of the day, he's just doing a podcast, just talking. He's not got any qualifications, and it's the same thing. We all make mistakes. We all talk about things, and it's not like the mainstream media never get anything wrong. I mean, they've been getting so much wrong. I mean, right back at the start. Remember, Boris Johnson was walking about shaking people's hands that had COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
And the mainstream media was like, everything's fine, get back to work. And I suppose the sort of, we're quite good to hear your views on some of the conspiracy theories thing. Because the thing is, like, I've been called a conspiracy theorist before with my music and with my podcast before all this happened. And now it seems like I've almost became mainstream. And some, I've even, a few friends have blocked me. I've unfollowed a few people over this as well. And it's not that I'm not, I'm open-minded and like to look at, I certainly don't trust the media, the government, but I like a wee bit more than just a snappy headline or like a random website I've never heard before. I do look for a bit more, and I'm lucky enough or privileged enough now to know people that are scientists or that they work in science and stuff, and I've partied with them, and I'm like, right, they don't work for an elite. These people are smarter than me, they've studied more, and they seem to sort of be explaining that, the vaccine might not be a bad thing. So that's where I kind of got that from. But yeah, I mean, what have you made of that? Because have you noticed how the tides have shifted a lot? Because I'm sure that earlier on you would have been called conspiracy theorists.
We've had that for sure, but I think it just comes back. We used to do a segment on the old show called Triangles, and it was because back then conspiracy theories were fun, whereas now it's like people are like, oh, it's life and death. And I suppose with certain things it is. I mean, I'm vaccinated. I'm actually doing a pre-record with somebody called Scientist Goes Pop tomorrow because it's a qualified scientist, somebody who actually used to work for Pfizer, I believe. And are you still there, mate?
Yeah, I'm still here, man. Yeah.
Aye, it's just frozen on my end, brother.
All right, yeah, man, you're fine.
So anyway, I'm doing a pre-record with a scientist tomorrow just so I can put some information out there. And he was actually following his page. Was the reason why I chose to get vaccinated. Now, me personally, that doesn't mean I'm for all of these controls. I'm against vaccine mandates because I'm strictly anti-authoritarian. And I really don't think anybody should be told what they should be mandated to put in their body on any level, vaccinations or otherwise. It's a little bit, I mean, I don't like using the word, but rapey, do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you, I know you're not pinning people down, but what you are doing is saying to them, oh, well, you can't have this job that you went to university and worked hard for and all of this.
I know,
I don't think that's
17,000 people for the NHS that we're just going to get. They're just going to get rid of. That would be an absolute disaster. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the passports either. I missed out on 3 gigs at the Barrowlands this year because they were wanting passports at the door. I didn't mind taking an NFT, take a test before it. That's absolutely fine. I try and take a wee test if I'm going to anywhere. Do you know what I mean? I don't mind. I don't see the big problem with putting a mask on if you're in a wee tiny local shop or you're on a bus or whatever. It's just, but yeah, as far as passports go, I'm against it, and mandatory vaccinations, I'm against it as well, because I could have quite easily been anti-vax as well. I mean, I reckon if this was, 5 or 6 years ago, if I was smoking loads of weed the way I used to as well, I would have a totally different opinion on it.
Definitely.
And people are looking at different sources, and once you get into the one algorithm and you start reacting to one thing, people are seeing a totally different version of reality. And if you're seeing this constant procession of stuff that you don't agree with, then you're going to be, why is everyone else thinking the opposite when there's so much evidence there? I mean, for example, we've got James Stewart commenting here saying he was right about the ivermectin and the microandroids. I think that's the heart complications word. I can't say. The Aussie was wrong, by the way. Check it.
Mitochondrial antibodies or something. I mean, and the ivermectin. I mean,
I think you're wrong, James. I think you need to check that. I'll double check it as well. But I think we did fact check that, and the Aussie guy was right. So that yes, there is a small risk of that thing happening with a vaccine, but there's a higher risk of it happening with COVID. But you're still talking about a very low 0.001% or whatever it is as well. Right. But yeah, I mean, that just shows you, so for whatever reason, James Stewart has now read information that Joe Rogan was right in that, and I've read information that he wasn't.
So algorithms again, isn't it? It's the thing is, I'd like to say as well, I might disagree with somebody, I might disagree with what James is saying, but I reserve the right to respect their opinion. And that's what I think's getting lost. We're all especially because we've been apart for so long, we're entrenched and we're living through these bloody screens and we're devices and whatever. And I guarantee you, if we're sat in the pub or at a gig or whatever, chatting about it, would have a laugh and a carry on because you can see each other's faces, you can slap each other in the back, or whatever, you know what I mean? But when it's like in, like, especially on Facebook and Twitter and whatever, it's just toxic as hell, and it's got really poisonous. Just refuse to play the game on those terms. I will not like shit all over another human being. But at the same time, if I get disrespected, I reserve the right to like disrespect them back, like one up from what they're doing, because that's just how life is, isn't it? Things should never change.
Social media is the death of agree to disagree. What you said in the pub, we'll agree to disagree. I don't think we're going to agree on this one, mate. And then you just get on and talk about something else.
Aye.
While social media, there is no backing out, because once a threads began, people are coming back and forth. There's a lot of whataboutery, and then it changed. The goalposts are moved, and there's usually, if it's a public forum especially, or even just a friend's or a personal page, there's usually about 5 or 6 people agreeing with you and 5 or 6 agreeing with the other person. So it becomes almost like a race to see who's right. And it's a terrible way to spend your life, man. I mean, I did a bit of that sort of early on, just because I was trying to just say to people, like, I don't know if that's true, blah, blah, blah. And I noticed that there was just an anxiety that came out, because then you can't actually go on with your day because you're checking your notifications. And if you don't respond in time, then you've almost lost the game. And it also reminds me of, I watched your show last night, and I thought you and Alice, who was brilliant, by the way, I'm really enjoying her as well, you brought up a really good thing that's really been bugging me, and that's the laugh emoji. So it's like, as soon as somebody's been announced dead or whatever, the laugh emojis come. It's, if anything to do with COVID, there's laugh emojis. Sometimes it's hard to say which side is doing it. Both sides are guilty of it. You know, if someone dies of COVID that was an anti-vaxxer, people laugh at that, which is absolutely disgusting. If people or people are laughing because they don't believe it's true, they believe that it's all a big act and we can't believe anything that we see. And the laugh emojis just does my nutting, man. It's just like, for fuck's sake,
for real.
Show some humanity. Someone's died.
Exactly, and it can be like interpreted very many different ways, because I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but like, you know, I've been interested in psychology and how we all interrelate with each other. I actually studied at the Garnet Hill Centre in Glasgow, and that's where I qualified.
Amazing.
Honestly, Glasgow is like my second home, dude. I can't wait to come back when all this shit's over. But like it's been very interesting to see how it's affected how we all communicate. And it was bad before the pandemic, but it's got even worse. And quite to your point about what you're saying, I think it's something like a single figure percentage of where communication skills are used via like these social networks. And I think it's what, 10 plus years in now. And I think it's like atrophying our brain. We're forgetting how to like relate to each other in a normal way. I mean, like, there's a lad, I hope doesn't end up watching this, but I'll just use an example. I see him walking his 2 dogs, and he's walking around one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been, like near where the house is. And he's just faces in the phone the whole way along. Like, I'll say, all right, mate, you know, and that's like what it's developed into. People are not like experiencing this like nature. And one of the things that's got me through this pandemic without like losing my mind is just reconnecting with nature and like going out, making sure I'm going out for a walk. I'm lucky I've got dogs as well, so it does help. But I would suggest, like, you know, if anybody's like feeling that, and I know I felt it as well. I said this on one of my shows recently that before I got ill, getting ill gave us a chance to reflect on a lot of stuff. And I really don't know how I used to take the level of shit that I used to take off people like every day on social media relentlessly. Now I can take a lot, but I looking back, I think it broke us a bit mentally, especially around the Brexit time. So I'm kind of looking to just do it a bit differently this time. And then that's like bandied about like self-care and all that. But one of the things is to have a digital detox. Like last night after the show, I've made this rule that I don't go back on social media after the show. I'll sleep. I'll have a cup of tea. Not while I'm asleep. Like, I'll do it the other way around. And then I'll wake up and I'll have a look and see what the reaction is then, you know, because by that time it's like, you know, getting on late and I'm nearly eating a 40 odd and I like me early nights apart from obviously when we're getting to go out again. So I just think it's really sad, like how people have retreated into their little camps and the kind of, I mean, you know, you said yourself you're falling out with people and all that. Same, like, but back in the day, people would just move on from each other. There wouldn't have been this like formal blocking thing. It would have been like,
to be honest, the majority of people I've seen in real life since, and they were absolutely fine, maybe with the odd exception. it's been a bit weird. But
That's good
everyone-
news. I'm pleased
but
to hear
everybody
that, man.
else, it's just some people shouldn't be on it. And, you know, there's a couple of people that I mean, I've only had to block one person, I think, and that's just because they kept on appearing on threads when I wasn't there, and you know, having a go at people who are, you know, like, I don't know,
No
like,
good,
people
man.
say that they've lost someone or whatever, or they've been really ill with it. You know, they're almost accusing people of being a liar, and it's like that can't happen, especially on an irrelevant thread and stuff like that. And I think that James has sort of summed it up with what he's saying is that you can't see the sarcasm and the irony and the
Yeah,
laughs
he's
and
right.
smiles when it's on a keyboard. You just assume that everybody's angry. And sometimes even putting in it used to be the laugh emoji. It was actually, I thought laugh emojis were for Wayne's, but a few years ago I started using them because my mate Tickle said, no, they're good because it shows that you're just having a joke. And that used to work for a while, but now the laugh emojis now seem like you're laughing at that person.
Yeah.
Which might not be the case.
It's like I say, it's an interpretation, and it's like, I mean, without getting too deep, it's like Carl Jung symbolism, like how people will interpret different things, and like, I just really think that like we need to take a step back and sort of one thing I've found that's really good. I've got that app on my devices where it tells us how long I've been spending online on different things, and the sort of work apps have went up, and the sort of social media side of it went right down, and that's, I think, a bit more of a healthier balance. And I'm looking to sort of cut that back more, you know, because like, I'll be honest with you, I like, you know, when we're building Milk the Cow and whatever, it was like 12, 13 hours a day because the algorithm has to be fed. And I just won't play that game anymore, which is why we've set up a mailing list. It's approaching 1,000 people. It's getting there, you know, and we're trying to do more of our stuff around the mailing list and a private Discord forum as well, so people can talk freely. One thing we're going to do as well is we've recognised that like people are suffering like this, so we're setting up like a monthly online support group, coffee morning, call it whatever you want, like a private thing. Like in the past, like when we were running the events, there was a percentage of ticket sales. We set up something called an EMDR therapy fund, and that's for people with PTSD. So we want to do, obviously, hopefully bring that back when we can resource it differently, because obviously the event side of things, given the state of the pandemic, we can't do as much. So that's all like bubbling up in the mix. You know, I want to like reach out to people and provide something for people. Last week we did a show with a clinically vulnerable person. It was a big eye opener for us. You know, it's a young lass. She was diagnosed with MS just before the pandemic, and then the world went mental, and she's been having to deal with that the last couple of years. And she's like, would be going out, she like loves live music, and that's all gone for her now, you know what I mean? And she's like, these are the type of people that we need to be trying to like do things with, like obviously initially privately and then taking it from there. So I think that's how Milk the Cow, evolving into Cow Daily, is changing. I suppose we have to recognise we have to use the internet for good as well, but there's got to be like, I think, like a wall around that kind of thing, because one thing before, obviously I know we're running on, one thing I want to say before we go, the pandemic's like they're going to talk about not announcing the daily deaths from Easter, so it's a bit like George W. Bush on the aircraft carrier with the mission accomplished banner behind him, and then the war carried on for another 10 years, but everybody will buy into that and people will get forgotten about, like clinically vulnerable people, and we can't allow that to happen. We cannot. These are like, we're brothers and sisters, people who come to our events, and on a wider scale as well. And I just won't let that happen at all. And do you know one thing I've noticed, Mark, right? I was sort of writing about that, like, since we got active again, probably the last sort of like month or so, we're a bit more active again when we've come back. And people have surprised us. Like, I haven't really followed the last year because I needed to focus on getting better. Like, the ebb and flow of the conversation online. And it surprised us, like, how much, like, crap I got for, like, just writing about, like, we can't forget about clinically vulnerable people. Like, that's not the world that I recognize. You know, we're all human beings, and we should be, like, being aware of everybody around we, you know. Now, I understand people can't go to, like, events, and maybe will never be able to, but I think one of the good things about the new skills that you learned and what I learned is, like, you know, you do a lot more events than I do, and get some live stream action on the go for people who maybe can't come, you know what I mean? And we can develop that and make sure everybody's included there.
Absolutely. We actually did one on Friday night there, which is a big financial risk to get it to get a live stream from, so people could tune in live, because we did loads of them over over lockdown. But I knew it was a bit risky because gigs were back on last Friday. We ended up having an internet issue at the venue, who I've apologised profusely. We ended up shutting it off after half an hour, but we recorded the full night, and I think the good news is that we're going to be able to stream it all as a premiere this Friday night or Saturday night, but I'll be here in the middle. So I think if it's going to be ready, we'll do it Friday, if not Saturday night, and I'll be in between acts, talking to people before and after their set and stuff like that. So it'll be kind of semi-live, so we can all watch it together, because nobody's seen it, including the artists, so it should be a good crack. And yeah, but I've learned a lot about how to do the live streams from there. So it is quite expensive to do it, but I don't mind taking the punt as long as people support it. So if you enjoy these shows, if you enjoy You Call That Radio or Milk the Cow, then please do support the Patreon. It's the only way that we can do it. We don't have any sponsorship, we don't have any funding, no adverts. It's just all about the Patrons, and thank you to the generosity of the Patrons to get us through this. So I'm definitely going to keep the show going. We've got loads of events coming up, actually. We've got the Attila the Stockbroker at the Icebox is in the 26th. We've got 5 gigs to announce. I think there's going to be another one announced later on tonight. 5 gigs to announce over the next couple of days. So we're getting back into the physical events, but we're going to keep the show going. Probably quality over quantity. And like you said, man, the live streaming thing, it can be done, especially if there's no drums involved, I think. You can do it cheaper. But as soon as you get drums involved, then it does get
anything with drums at an event, man. Jeez, it's like miking them things up. Like that's why you pay a sound engineer, innit?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. But shouts to Capture Works, they did a great job. We did 5 shows. If you want to check out the quality we got in real time, it was none of this pre-recorded push. We got it looking and sounding amazing thanks to the people at Capture Works, and we're trying out a few different venues and a few different people to keep those live events going, because there's lots of people who can't go due to financial reasons, accessibility reasons, geography, or maybe they can't get a babysitter, or maybe they just can't be asked. And I know there's still people who aren't sure about going out and stuff. But yeah, we're going to be doing the things. Hopefully Friday or Saturday night we'll be back for the Friction Burn Supper. Celtic are winning 1-0, so I know that you probably all want to watch the football, so we're going to go and check
I've just
that.
alienated half of Glasgow there, sorry, but I am a Celtic fan.
Let's say, Mark, have you got a new house? You live in my grand piano, do you ever look at my new house? That's that Patreon, that's that YouTube money. No, don't worry, I'm still living in a crack den. It's a green screen. That's
this is a rental in Shetland. This is not a green screen.
No, that's real. You're actually got the grand
I'm real,
piano.
man.
Like, better get the green screen on so it doesn't look like I'm doing too well. Yeah, what amazing, man. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. Everyone go and subscribe to Milk the Cow YouTube channel, Cow Daily. Check it out every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Check out the Patreon. And I'm going to leave you, since we're talking about emojis. I see Epi saying I love emojis. I'm going to end with a tune, because I made a whole concept album called At This Point. At This Point 2 will be coming out, I think, in March, since we're celebrating or commemorating 2 years of this absolute clusterfuck. This is called Hate My Notifications. Thank you, Mike Cow, and enjoy the football.
Big up everybody in Glasgow.
Hope to see you in the real world soon, man. All the best.
Without a doubt, brother. And like, if you're listening from Milton Cow, like the Facebook 50 more if you get a 2,000.
Nice one. Bye.
Never thought I'd see the day that'd end. The gardens or computer selling haters getting presidential pardons about every day in lockdown, no furlough pay. And now some of them are rich and I reach minimum wage. See you banana bread, please shut up and be here. Half of you cunts never left the house anyway. All tone is launched on the social media. Every emoji makes me feel inferior. The rise of a democracy, your brother is watching me and sponsored ads. Some have brought the dead, but democracy don't bother calling me. My phone is a shit show and my inbox is a novel full of people I don't know. My notifications are doing my nut and cuts always want me to Christopher nothing for me right now. The social's not working. The day I delete this is the day I do something. I hate my notifications, but love the dopamine of when they like my status. They want instant connection all day. I can't take it, I can always reply, cause I'm sick of it and waging 24/7, 365. Took a day off once and it sparked rumours I had died. I'm in 24/7, 364. 23/7 like Epstein's increased security. A PC with the virus checker, one line wire, searching question nudity. Well, maximum get a maximum sentence for a new son named immunity. Pushing to the person and the head 10 pages newspapers look the other way. Meanwhile, not a day goes by the Glasgow Live posts a question that's intention is to anger and divide. What a strange timeline the Facebook made. Rage equals engagement is how now we all get paid. We used to laugh at flat earth before the advent and clickbait suggested videos. Open up the rabbit holes that drag the suggestible people down the darkest of shows. I blame the mainstream media for cozying up to them and those. There's a posted question loads hold to account, and yes, even oppose. Meanwhile, corporations yield more power than the MPs who appease voters with flags, not facts. May wonder why this action leads to QAnon, Twitter storms, and your dad gathering statues in your mall. Being on TikTok like and get rich quick. Assholes, I hate my notifications, but love the dopamine of when they like my status. Labor instant connection all day. I can't take it, I can't always reply, cause I'm sick of it and raging. 24/7, 365. Took a day off once and it sparked rumors I had died. I mean 24/7, 364.
You want weirdo or do you want it?
What?